Hello, friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Before we take you to your favorite Sports History Network show, just want to tell you a little bit about some merch that you can pick up that represents your favorite SHN podcast. So far, there's t-shirts, coffee mugs, and even books from some of the authors that do podcasts right here on SHN. Who could buy something better than that, than have the history right from the gentleman that you hear talking about it? But we also are adding things each and every day. And where's that store, may you ask? Well, it's at SportsHistoryNetwork.com. Up at the top, there is the SHN merch button. Click on that. It'll take you right to the store, and you can be representing your favorite podcast and show the world that, hey, on the swag that I'm using, it's the headquarters of sports yesteryear, Sports History Network, and my favorite podcaster, the Sports History Network store. Shop there today. We all know from watching the game of football that the basic premise of the game is to try to score a touchdown. That's the big point score against your opponent. Well, the game wasn't always that way, and Football Archaeology's Tim Brown joins us tonight to tell us about the game before the point system we currently have. Tim's got the history on this and more coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at SportsHistoryNetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pigpen, your portal to positive football history. And we are at our Tuesday event, what everybody's been waiting for, Football Archaeology with author Timothy Brown. Tim Brown, welcome back to the Pigpen.
Hey, Darren. Thank you once again. Look forward to chatting, seeing what we find out tonight.
Yeah, no, Tim, you have some really interesting topics that come up on your tidbits and some of your other works that you put out. And I know you have a lot of different avenues where you're bringing in information for your research. But one of them that I know you've mentioned in the past, and maybe you could go into a little bit more detail, is your collection that you have of some college yearbooks. And maybe you could share a little bit about that, how you get information from those.
Yeah, so I actually only have about, I probably have about a dozen college yearbooks that I physically own, but I've got, I don't know, a couple thousand that are, PDFs. And then I subscribe to a thing called eyearbooks.com. So if I'm able to download them, I download them, from university sites. Just because then it's just handier, it's easier to search through them. But, basically what I do is sometimes, if I'm watching a football game or kind of listening to the news, but not really paying full attention, a lot of times I'm just, scrolling through college yearbooks, looking for images. It could be the artwork in, the athletic or football related artwork, but mostly I'm looking for images that are just show something about the game at the time that is not, it's no longer part of the game, or it illustrates a concept. And other times it's just, hey, it's just a really cool looking image, right? I mean, some of the photographs are just great. And so, what I do is I just have a way of pulling those off. I kind of catalog them with a brief description. And then, sometime down the road when I'm looking for a topic, for a tidbit, or for an article that I'm writing, I kind of scroll through my items or do searches on them, and so I've just got handy. I don't know. I've probably got. I know I've looked at over 3,100 yearbooks. So, and I can tell you, which issue for every school. Maybe 140 different schools now. So and then I just basically I've got them available in the little library. So. Anyways, that's, a lot of the way I illustrate stories or generate stories is just looking through these old images. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't talked about this one yet. So let's do a story on it.
So a lot of times the images that you're collecting are, whether it's through PDF or from the yearbooks in your own collection, those are your inspiration for some of your posts and tidbits.
Yeah, because there's the unfortunate thing with the yearbooks is that there isn't a good way to just search through all these yearbooks. So, in some cases I know, for instance, that I'm writing about a particular topic. I came across an article while I was doing some other research, and then I'll go to that yearbook, that team's yearbooks, to see if there's images that relate to the article I'm writing. But, certainly a lot of times I'm just going and, I found, in all the yearbooks that I've gone, I found 2 images of the punt out process. So, basically a part of the game that disappeared in 1922. But I found 2 punt outs, and it was great just because, if you didn't know what a punt out was, you wouldn't even know what the heck that image was or what it was representing. But I spotted these 2, I think one in Texas and one was a Chicago game. Maybe it might have been an Illinois yearbook, but anyways, it's just kind of cool stuff. Just finding these things that, at least it shows, hey, this really did exist.
Right.
It wasn't just a story.
That's interesting, and you bring something to light that many of us don't know. I mean, even somebody like myself, I learn something new almost every day, and I'm quite a bit in the books and newspapers and everything else in football history. But I learn something from your tidbits each and every day. So I think listeners, you can too. We'll give you some information near the end of this program, and it's in the show notes as well, so you can get connected with Tim and his great tidbits he has each and every day. But today's topic, we're talking about old football, but we're talking about even a little older than the punt outs of 1922 when they ended, going to football before points-based scoring. And I think that's an interesting topic you had back on September 9th as one of your tidbits, and hope that you could chat about that a little bit tonight.
Yeah. So, football, as everybody knows, is derived from rugby. And when the Intercollegiate Football Association met in 1876, they basically adopted the rugby rule book with 3 or 4 exceptions. They did change a couple of things. And one of the things was just kind of renaming. They named whatever rugby called it, they called it a touchdown instead. But so the scoring was it's not what we think of as a normal scoring system today. So I'm going to read this just because it's kind of bizarre, but rule number 7 from that rule book defined, the scoring process. Number 1, it says, a match shall be decided by the majority of touchdowns. A goal shall be equal to 4 touchdowns, but in case of a tie, a goal kicked from a touchdown shall take precedence over 4 touchdowns. I mean, that just sounds like total gobbledygook. But, back then, the goal or the purpose of football, what you were trying to do was to kick the ball through the uprights. And a touchdown was really just a means to an end. It wasn't the end. For the most part, it wasn't the end itself. So you wanted to score a touchdown because then you got a free kick at the goal. And you also, and so, now we all know that the touchdown is what really counts. It's 6 points, and the kick after the touchdown is only worth 1. But back then, the game was very much a kicking game, and so the value came in kicking goals, and so it was basically it was this equivalency based system. It wasn't a straight points process like I think virtually every sport uses today. It's just this kind of this gobbledygook. A goal shall be equal to 4 touchdowns. So basically you'd have to score 4 touchdowns to have the same value as just 1 goal kicked through the through the uprights. However, if a goal kicked from touchdown, meaning a goal kicked after the touchdown, if teams ended up tied, one had 4 touchdowns, the other had a goal kicked after the touchdown, then the latter team would win. That's what the last part of that rule meant.
Okay, so
So
the kick being good was more important than the 4 touchdowns, which equal the same amount of points.
yes, because the kick came after a touchdown,
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
As opposed to a goal from field, which would have just equaled the goal.
Now,
So,
I know you have this in your book, How Football Became Football, but I'm not recollecting the year right offhand. When did that sort of change from that goal scored to more of a point based?
Yeah, so 1883. So still,
Okay.
very early on in the game. And once that occurred, then a goal from field, what we call field goal, so it's a scrimmage kicked goal, could have been a drop kick. Well, at that point, it would have all been drop kicks, but that was worth 5 points. The goal from touchdown or try after touchdown was worth 4 points, and a touchdown was worth 2. So, in effect, the field goal is worth 5, and then the combination of a touchdown and the kick afterwards was 6 points, right? So, it kind of was making a touchdown worth 1 point, right? And then safety was 1 point that year, and then things, they kept tweaking it as basically people became more interested in moving the ball down the field and scoring touchdowns as opposed to kicking goals. Then they kept ratcheting up the value of the touchdown relative to the field goal, and part of that too was just they felt that football was a team game, and they didn't want so much of the point value resting on the ability of a kicker. They wanted the ability of all 11 to show through, and so they kept adjusting the point values until basically 1912 is when we got to our current scoring system, not including 2-point conversions and some of the defensive the 1 point safety and defensive scores after extra point attempts, those kinds of things.
Well, we're certainly glad that they did change it to the way it is now, with the touchdown being more important than the field goal and the extra point, because it really changed the landscape of the game and made it a more exciting game and the great game it is today. So,
yeah, and it's it's always I think especially Europeans make fun of us for having a game called football where the foot really isn't as big a part of the game as it used to be, but it once was.
That's for sure, and we just take it for granted. We don't even think about the foot in football being related to the foot. Really, it's just football. So
yeah.
So, very interesting. Tim, why don't you share now? We promised earlier that you would share where people could get their own subscription or get their own daily dose of your tidbits, and if you could give them the information, please.
Yeah. So I publish a tidbit every day on footballarchaeology.com. Couple of times a month, I'll publish some of their long form article, and then I also publish the links to your podcast on the site. So it's footballarchaeology.com. You can also find me on Twitter under the Football Archaeology name. And if you were intrigued enough by our conversation about punt outs, there is a story on there about punt outs that I wrote, 2 years ago, something like that. So it explains that whole process. So on the front page, there's one of those little magnifying glass search functions, and so you just type in punt out, and it'll pop up without an issue.
Okay. Tim Brown, footballarchaeology.com. Thank you once again for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your daily tidbits. And we'll hopefully be talking to you again next week.
Okay. Very good. Thanks again.
We're taking a peek over at the chains and the down marker. It's 4th and long. We're going to have to punt the ball and get on out of here, but we'll have another series tomorrow for your football history headlines, so be sure to tune in. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. PigskinDispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast. PigskinDispatch.com is a proud affiliate of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of sports yesteryear.
Hi, everybody. Dan and Andrew from Hello Old Sports here. We wanted to drop in and let you know about our latest episode.
That's right. We interviewed the co-authors of Phyllis George, Shattering the Ceiling, a biography of groundbreaking broadcaster Phyllis George. And her life is really sort of a journey through 20th century America, from Miss America pageants to the Kentucky State House to the groundbreaking NFL Today show on CBS, even the Kentucky Colonels of the old ABA. We got into all sorts of stories about the Celtics under Red Auerbach, about the interview with Roger Staubach, about really all sorts of things, a fight between Brent Musburger and Jimmy the Greek. We really enjoyed talking with Lenny Shulman and Paul Volpone, who teamed up to write this book.
The book is on sale right now, wherever books are sold. Within reason. Garage sales, probably not. So go ahead and pick up a copy today. And if you want a chance to win the book, you can go to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways and register for a chance to win. Goodbye, old sports.